All right, welcome back to Fight Talk, where we talk combat sports. My name is Austin Ullman, and we've got the UFC 308 preview today. Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway. A fantastic fight we have here. Seemed like it was going to happen at 307 originally. Here we are at 308 in Abu Dhabi. Tomorrow afternoon, these guys are finally going to share the octagon together. And it was quite the road to get here. Max Holloway has completely revived his career with the victory against Justin Gaethje at UFC 300. And you've got a guy in Ilia Topuria who's been an absolute wrecking ball in this division, and it just felt like a matter of time before he was going to finally get there. He's there. He's beat the champion. He is the champion. And now he's got to fight off this guy in Max Holloway who's totally revived and rejuvenated his career. He was the gatekeeper. He was the guy who couldn't beat the champion. And it didn't seem like that would ever change. I mean, he could beat Arnold Allen, and he could beat the Korean Zombie, and he could beat these guys, but he couldn't get that big one. He couldn't get the win against Volk. He could really beat everyone else at 45, but he could not beat Volk. And Volk certainly wasn't losing to anybody else, so the whole time it was like, well, Volk's best challenge is Max Holloway, but we've seen the fight 3 times. We don't need to see it again. And now I'll raise my hand right away. I'd love to see it again. I think we might see it again. I think we will see it again if Max Holloway wins tomorrow afternoon. So Max Holloway, he's beaten these guys. He takes the fight at UFC 300. And then he finally gets his break. Ilia Topuria beats Alexander Volkanovski. And that's what he needed. He needed a new champion. He needed someone to come in, beat Volk, and have a reason to get another title shot. But now all of a sudden he's got this fight at UFC 300 against Justin Gaethje, and we're all like, oh my goodness, this can't end well at all. I mean, he finally caught a break, and Justin Gaethje was the same deal. Justin Gaethje finally caught a break. He was going to get a title shot, and now both guys are fighting each other, and these are two violent men, and I picked Justin Gaethje to win it handily, and then Max Holloway comes in there and delivers the knockout of the year, a crazy moment, points to the center of the octagon at the end of the fight, knocks him out. So the path here for Max Holloway has been incredible. For Ilia Topuria, it's a path of just been an absolute wrecking ball. Just destroyed everybody in his sight. And he beat Bryce Mitchell, he beat Josh Emmett, and then he beat Volk. He got the shot. He fought a different Volk, right? Not the dominant Volk that beat Yair Rodriguez the previous summer. It was a Volk that was slower, just got head kicked. That stuff changes your career. So for Ilia, it's not a... He's destroyed everyone. He's 15-0. He's got 13 finishes, 8 submissions, 5 knockouts. But it hasn't been this situation where he's fought all these crazy names at 45. There's a lot of good names at 45 he hasn't fought. Yair Rodriguez, Diego Lopez. But he has dominated everyone. He's passed the eye test. He's a great submission artist. He's really quick. He's really powerful. In fact, when this fight was announced, to me, it kind of felt 50-50 favor Ilia. I am picking Ilia, and I'm picking him big in this fight. I think he's quicker than Max Holloway in the striking. I think he's more powerful than Max Holloway in the striking. And I think, he's certainly a better submission artist, right? So this is a scenario that we found ourselves in where I think Max Holloway he's at a big-time disadvantage in this fight. I look at a guy like Ilia in this fight. I think he gets like a first-round takedown. I think Holloway's tired, and Holloway's not a guy that can get up and one-punch power, you're gone. That's not the kind of guy he is. And if he gets tired after, say, 3 minutes on the ground in the first round, I don't think he could come back and win that fight. Even for Gaethje, he dominated the fight, but it took just the right angle, just the right punch to knock him out. He's not this brute force power guy. You look at the fight against the Korean Zombie. I don't think he was going to knock out the Korean Zombie in that fight, but the Korean Zombie came in that, I think it was 3rd round, and just went bonkers and was like, I'm going to end it here. Like, I'm just get the knockout or get knocked out here. He got knocked out. Same thing. Caught him in the perfect spot when the Korean Zombie wasn't looking. And it wasn't just this brute force of power. It's not who Max Holloway is. But he has always been seen as the best boxer in the UFC. And I think Ilia Topuria is a better boxer than Max Holloway. I think we're going to see that too. But that's just in the boxing standpoint. And Ilia, Max isn't going to shoot any takedowns here. Ilia is probably. Ilia has said that in the first round he's going to point right away and try to meet him in the middle and see who's the better boxer. But, I mean, again, Ilia hasn't fought the guys Max Holloway's fought. And he didn't fight the same Volk that Max Holloway fought 3 times. But he certainly passes the eye test. His boxing is extremely quick, extremely powerful, devastating right hand. We saw that with Volk. So, my prediction, I'll just say it right now, I think he takes him down the first round. I think they box plenty. I think we see plenty of boxing. Listen, if there's not a lot of, I mean, this is going to be really disappointing if Ilia just wrestles the whole time. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But I think it's going to be a third-round submission from Ilia Topuria. But I don't think the whole fight will take place on the ground. I think we'll see plenty of boxing. I think we'll be satisfied with what we see in the boxing game for both guys. I don't think either guy gets cracked. I think Ilia just gets a takedown, wins the second round, takes him down the third, gets a submission. Significant height advantage, 4 inches for Holloway. That's what he's got. But for Holloway, the thing is the boxing. And Ilia Topuria is a really good boxer. That's the difference. Justin Gaethje's awesome. He's a violent, powerful man. He's not a boxer, right? He's not a boxer like Max Holloway is. And I think Ilia's too good at Max Holloway's best aspect of his game. And I love Max, so I hate picking against him. I picked Gaethje over him. I'm picking Ilia confidently over him, just as confidently as I picked Gaethje, and we know how that worked out. So I'm not counting out Max. But I am saying that this is much more of a matchup nightmare than Gaethje was in that fight at UFC 300. And I think we're going to see that. Could he go out there and put on an absolute masterclass and just outbox this guy? I just don't see it happening because I just think Ilia is too dominant on the ground. And I just don't think, I don't see a scenario where he just gets outboxed and can't respond. I mean, I know he's got the length advantage, but I think Ilia's way too good with that. I think we've seen that. And so I'm picking Ilia to win dominantly, third round submission. What's next? UFC 312 was announced in Australia. Volkanovski headlining. Seems like the winner will fight there, barring some kind of crazy injury in this fight. And I fully expect, I mean, that's going to be a great storyline either way. Volk deserves to go home. Think about all these short notice fights he's taken, all these things he's done for the UFC. He totally deserves to get this shot because, frankly, I think he's going to be the underdog against either guy in that fight. And we'll talk more about this tomorrow afternoon after the fights. But I think he'll be the underdog. And I think we're going to see a scenario where it's going to really help him to be at home because he's not as quick as either of these guys. He's not as good as a wrestler. Certainly as Ilia. But listen, for Ilia, it's the rematch. Great storyline there. For Max Holloway, this is a crazy storyline. I've been talking about it for a long time. Kind of willing it into existence because I want this to happen. I really do. For Max Holloway to get beat 3 times by this guy, for his entire career to be, I mean, he was respected. He was always top 10 pound for pound. We always knew how good he was. He just couldn't quite beat Volk. And this isn't the same Volk anymore. But if he could fight him a 4th time and beat him after this rejuvenation of his career, if he goes Gaethje, Topuria, Volk to become champion, that is an all-time great story in the sport. I mean, and obviously he'd be the champion after this, but for his first title defense to be against the guy he lost 3 times to for the title, that'd be fantastic. And Max Holloway's a guy that everybody in the media loves. Everybody, all the fighters in the UFC love this guy. He's probably the most loved guy in the sport. And so I mean, I'm probably going to cheer for him tomorrow. I just think Ilya's way too good. For Ilya, after that, you've got talks about a Spain show in the summer, which wouldn't make sense with the Volk thing with 312. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow after the fights, based on what happens. No reason to get too far into it right now since we have no idea. And as Max Holloway said at the press conference yesterday, we're going to find out. And then Ilya kept repeating him. Listen, Max, I said it. He's beloved by all the fans. Ilya might be on the other side of the spectrum right now. I know Jackson. I was talking to Jackson. He likes him. I'm not a big fan. I think the 2-month period after his win against Volk really hurt him. He just went on all these podcasts and just started spewing all this crazy stuff. And seemed like maybe he was trying to be someone that he really isn't. Didn't seem too genuine, which frustrating, And so, yeah, I'm picking Ilia Topuria. Hopefully we see it on the feet again. Hopefully we see this fight on the feet. This is a fantastic boxing fight right here. In fact, I would pay to watch these guys put on boxing gloves and just box all day. Just a masterclass that both guys are capable of putting on. Hopefully we can see that, but I'm picking Ilya confidently. I did it with Gaethje. I'm doing it with Ilya. I'm sticking to it. I love Max Holloway, guys. Don't get me wrong, but Ilya's just passed the eye test. I can't say he's beating all these guys. The Volk he beat is not the same Volk. I understand, but everything looks really good with this guy, and this fight's good. The Volk fight would be good. Ilya, Diego Lopez, I think is the fight in the division. Two guys who are really good in all phases of the game. Submissions, knockouts, they can do it all. That's going to be a really good fight. Co-main event, Robert Whittaker, Khamzat Chimaev. I don't want to jinx it, but it seems like we're actually going to see this fight happen tomorrow, which is crazy. It was originally supposed to happen June 22, I believe. Aliskerov hopped in after Chimaev got violently ill, and now here we are with kind of, I feel, it's a little different. So Whittaker's got way more power than Holloway. Chimaev's much more a different wrestling style. He's got the Dagestan style, where Topuria is looking for submissions. Khamzat's looking to carry you around and throw you down and ground and pound and all these different things. It's fair to say wherever this fight takes, if you could tell me right now, there's more time on the ground in this fight than up top, Chimaev wins. More time up top, I think Whittaker wins. Whittaker's screwed if it goes to the ground. Khamzat's not. Khamzat can outbox Whittaker, I think, and win. This guy, we forget how talented this guy is. We've hated on him because of pulling out of these fights and things. He's such a talented fighter and a talented boxer. And so, his last 3 fights, he beat Burns, Kevin Holland, and Kamaru Usman. Whittaker's last 3 fights, obviously Khamzat dominated all those. The Usman fight was 2-1, but dominated, I would say. Whittaker, his 3rd fight back was July 8th against Dricus Du Plessis. I think it was a 290 card, I believe, on the Volk undercard. At that time, we didn't know Dricus would be the champ and be this good. But this is, at that point, I remember talking to Jackson, this is really bad news. This is a guy who's going to have to fight contenders now. And his career's in a tough spot. Feels like that was it. And he goes and beats Paulo Costa, destroys Aliskerov. And sure, it was short notice for Aliskerov, but he was training for the week before. He was okay. I don't think there was any injuries or anything there in that camp. He just destroyed him, and Aliskerov wasn't quite ready for the moment. But Aliskerov's a guy whose only loss was to Khamzat Chimaev. And then Robert Whittaker goes in there and destroys him right away. So this is one of those fights. It's pretty easy. Wherever it takes place probably determines who wins. Khamzat Chimaev is minus 245. I'm picking Khamzat convincingly. I think he takes him down early. I just don't see how Whittaker can stop it. And I think he just violently wrestles him until he gets a ground and pound or a submission or something. The difference with Holloway is Holloway gets taken down in the first round. I think it's going to be really hard. He's not a one-punch knockout guy. I know the UFC 300, he just caught him right. And it was after rounds and rounds of destruction. For Whitaker, he's a guy who can get taken down, I think, in a round or two and still get a knockout. Extremely raw power. But I wouldn't bank on it. And so I'm going to take Khamzat Chimaev. I'll say this is a tough one. I'll say it goes the distance. I think Chimaev wins. Dominantly. Maybe Whitaker can get around. But Khamzat does not waste time with these knockdowns or these takedowns in any of these fights. He does not waste time. He goes immediately for these takedowns and successfully gets them. He is 46% with his takedown accuracy, and he just tries for so many of them. So it's an onslaught, and I don't see Whitaker being able to stop it. Looked like Khamzat had a hard time making the weight here, which is just crazy. Obviously 13-0, Whitaker 27-7. But these are two fan favorites here. These are two guys who are, listen, the UFC fans, like, Max Holloway's, like, probably number one, I would say. Khamzat and Whitaker. Whitaker's for sure top 5. Khamzat's up there. Two people love just the way this guy goes about his business. And in an era where we're starting to get more boring wrestling, Khamzat Chimaev brings a completely different style. A style that UFC fans love. And so, I mean, it is a kind where it's massive elbows on the ground, pick you up and take you to my corner. All kinds of different things. And he just has this way about him. UFC fans love it. And I think everyone's so pro-striking, anti-wrestling, but I think we forget sometimes how fun certain styles of wrestling are. Khamzat Chimaev has one of those styles. So if Whitaker wins this fight, well, again, we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but if Whitaker wins the fight, you have an interesting situation where Duplessis has to take a fight soon, schedule a fight soon, you would think, just based on the rotation of when champions are going to fight in the future. Strickland deserves a shot. He really does not want to fight somebody, especially Whitaker, it seems like, and obviously certainly not Chimaev either. But it seems like, I don't know, man. It's tough. Dricus Sean, it just does not, it does not move the needle for me. I don't think it moves the needle for you guys, but it might end up being what we get stuck with, and Whitaker having to wait if he wins this fight. Frankly, I think Chimaev's going to win the fight. And I don't know how long he's going to last at 185. If they Chimaev Strickland would be a mauling. Chimaev would destroy Strickland. But if they make that fight and then make Chimaev sit out until, and also in the middle of this, we're not sure if Khamzat can even fight in the U.S. So there's all of that. And there's the fact that they really want Dricus to fight in South Africa. It seems like at the press conference, Dana mentioned that the South Africa thing's happening. Someone asked him a question about it. So Dricus, it seems like Dricus Sean is going to happen there. And for Chimaev to get a title shot, it seems like that fight's going to have to happen in Saudi or Abu Dhabi. And so kind of an interesting situation there. I think Khamzat, I still think I've said it always. I understand the issues with the sickness and pulling out of these fights. I think he beats every single guy in this division. I love this guy, man. I think he beats every single guy in this division. I think the Dricus fight is actually the most interesting. I think he destroys Izzy, destroys Strickland. I think he beats Whitaker handily. Dricus, it's just such an odd style, which I think makes that fight really interesting. But I still think Khamzat beats him. But guys, we are not that far away from Khamzat Chimaev fighting at light heavyweight. He started at 170. He's fighting at 185 now. And I think we're close to light heavyweight Khamzat Chimaev. You guys understand that means Alex Pereira, Khamzat Chimaev could happen. Now, first we got to see Ankalaev, in my opinion. But, I think Khamzat should just force the UFC's hand, do everything he can to get this belt at 185. He had a hard time making weight at 85. I've said it. I said it like last year on a podcast. And this is like really crazy, but like this guy could fight heavyweight at some point in his UFC career. Like dead serious, this guy could fight heavyweight. He's having a hard time making 85 now. And so if the 05 thing happens, we could be talking about Alex Pereira, Khamzat Chimaev in the near future. A lot of people forget about that. But I've talked about this for a long time. Khamzat Chimaev is knocking on the door and will fight at 205 in his career, without a doubt. The question is, will Alex Pereira still be there? If that fight were to happen, the aura there, the stare-off between those two guys would be fantastic. It would be the greatest build-up in a fight where the least amount of words are said, like at a press conference or something. It would be so fantastic. But even beyond that, like Ankalaev fight with Khamzat, like a lot of really Yuri fight, like a lot of good opportunities there. So something to keep in mind. We'll talk more about that tomorrow, but something to keep in mind if Chimaev is able to pull this win off. Third fight down. Speaking of Magomed Ankalaev, he's fighting. He is minus 400, which kind of surprising against Rakic. Rakic's last fight was Yuri Prochazka at UFC 300 on the prelims there, and Magomed Ankalaev's last win was against Johnny Walker, I believe, yes, in the Apex. So, minus 400 for Magomed Ankalaev. A lot of people giving Rakic a good chance in this fight. Rakic looked really good against Yuri in that fight, but Yuri in the second round just kind of did Yuri things, and it's just such a tough style to handle. But Rakic is confident. I think we could be in store for a really good fight here. But it will be interesting to see. You've got a guy in Ankalaev who's trying to convince people that he can stand and strike. And this is a fight where I would say if I was Ankalaev's coach, wrestle. And by the way, I stand up for Ankalaev. He doesn't wrestle that much. A lot of people just have this weird notion that since he's from Russia, he wrestles a lot. He strikes a lot, but this is a fight where he should not be striking. Rakic is nasty with the leg kicks. He's a good striker, and so Ankalaev should wrestle his way through this entire fight. Forget about what people say. This guy's a striker. We can't forget that. But I'm picking Ankalaev to win easily. I think he wrestles a lot. I think he wins by TKO. Okay? So I think he wins by TKO. This is a guy who should win this fight. The UFC's probably cheering for Rakic just because Rakic it wouldn't be in line for a title shot yet, but it would slow down Ankalaev and not force their hand on that Pereira-Ankalaev fight. But let's be honest, UFC can do whatever they want. They gave Khalil Rountree the title shot ahead of Magomed Ankalaev, which is crazy, by the way, to look back at. Khalil did amazing, maybe better than Ankalaev will, but the fact that everyone's like Ankalaev Pereira and then he sticks him on this card against Rakic is just insane. Picking Ankalaev, should get the shot with Pereira next, who knows. Fourth fight, Dan Ige, the guy who took the short notice fight against Diego Lopez. That was a great moment. That was crazy. I can't believe, looking back, I can't believe that even happened. But he took that crazy short notice fight, fighting Lerone Murphy, a guy who both me and Jackson have said is a top 5 prospect in the UFC, a guy who will be a champion, a guy who's really good. He's 14-0-1. He just beat Edson Barbosa in his last fight. He's a fantastic striker. He's a guy from England. He's the next star out of England. And he's just a hardworking guy. Doesn't talk a ton, but a really good striker, and took Edson Barbosa to town on the strikes when they fought. And we know what Edson can do in the striking game, even still. Dan Ige, he's got to be about as confident as he's ever been before off of a loss. I mean, Diego Lopez is that guy. Diego Lopez is the level of Max and Ilya, which is headlining this card. And he just took Diego Lopez 2-1, and he's on here fighting a contender, Leroy Murphy. He's got to feel pretty good. And he took that fight in incredible short notice. He was just chilling with the boys in Vegas, and he's like, oh, I can actually take this fight. And he did, and Lopez beat him in the first 2 rounds. The final round, and granted, Lopez was moving up weight so much because of what was happening, but Dan Ige won the final round, and at the end of the fight was on top of Diego Lopez, hitting him with the ground and pound. It was an incredible moment. And so that's the kind of thing where Dan Ige, man, he changed his life with that fight. I believe that. Like, he was at a point where it was just like headlining Apex. He was scheduled to headline an Apex card the next month. Or maybe it was co-main event, the Apex card. He was just an Apex guy. And when you do stuff like that in the UFC, you completely change your persona, your identity, and who you are. And Dan Ige has done that. And that makes this fight so much more fun. I've been waiting. I'm like, when's Dan Ige's next fight? And he wasn't on the top of my radar by any means. I was watching his fights, but it wasn't like, oh, I got to get up for the Dan Ige fight. And now it's like, it just adds this whole new dimension to who he is. Regardless, Leron's my guy. Minus 270. I'm picking him. I don't think he gets the finish. I think he outstrikes him. And then the last fight that I really want to get into is the first fight on the main card, Shara Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. Shara only minus 175. In his last couple fights, he's been like minus 1,000, minus big numbers. He showed some big-time holes in that last fight in Abu Dhabi. And obviously this is another guy where, listen, I mean, we're not sure if he can fight in the U.S. Well, actually, we know for sure he can't. He's not the Hamzat situation. We know he can't with the eye issue. And so his last fight was a unanimous decision victory, but he was taken to places that he hasn't been taken before, and he wasn't as effective with all these leg kicks. He's 14-0. He's super good. He's Russian, but not a wrestler. He is a leg kicker, the best leg kicker. His leg kicks are his strikes. Like, that's what he is. Fantastic leg kicker. This fight is at 185. Petrosyan last fight was against Vieira, which was a loss, and lost to Kai Baralho 4 fights ago. He's 9-3. Nothing crazy if he wins is going to happen. But for Shara, this is a guy at 185 who could be a player, but certainly they're going to slow it down here now. He was big-time favorites, and now they're going to slow it. They were moving him up quickly. He's fighting a lot. You're going to slow it down now. He says he wants to break the record, I think, in the UFC for most times fighting in a year. Or I forget what he said. Something along the lines of wanting to be active. And this is not a situation where I would encourage him to speed things up. I would take it slow. He's only minus 175 for a reason. He's extremely talented, great striker, most impressive leg kicker, not like damage-wise, but like the angles. It's just incredible to watch. Even at the open workouts that they do in Abu Dhabi every time, it's just like must-watch stuff. It's so cool. I think he wins this fight by unanimous decision again. I think Petrosyan really works him for a little bit, maybe takes him down. But I think Magomedov does win this fight, and I think he stays undefeated and goes to 15-0. Rafael dos Anjos and Jeff Neal is on this card. Rebecca is on this card. Chris Barnett is on this card. So all names to keep an eye on. But this is taking place. Everyone's made weight. This is going to take place tomorrow afternoon. I'm going to drop this right after I'm done recording here. Man, I cannot wait for this. Hopefully we get the boxing matchup with Ilya and Max. But this is a fantastic fight card. They really loaded this one. They're doing Abu Dhabi some massive favors, and I think the people in Abu Dhabi are very happy about that. So tomorrow, after the fights, I will make sure to hit you guys with the post show. Potentially Jackson will join for that, and talk about what's next for each of these guys. There's going to be some really fascinating situations at 45, at 85. at 205 for Hamzat, maybe talk a little bit more about that. But for now, I am Austin Ullman. This has been the Fight Talk YouTube channel, the UFC 308 preview, and we will see you next time.